Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're in chapter 14 of our book. This is titled Cultivating Healthy Mental States, Loving-kindness, Compassion, Sympathetic Joy, and Equanimity. This is where you're learning about 4 healthy mental states that you can cultivate in the mind in order to remedy specific symptoms that the Buddha discovered in the mind that these healthy mental states remedy. It's almost like a prescription. This is where the Buddha gets the reputation of being like a doctor, where there are certain symptoms that he observed in the mind, and then there's certain prescription or antidote or remedy that you can apply in order to eliminate those. So I'm going to be teaching you these 4 healthy mental states, what they are, what the symptoms that you're actually remedying, and how to cultivate them. Essentially, what you're going to be able to do today is develop more of a tool belt to be able to employ certain tools that you need in any given situation in order to remedy the symptoms that the Buddha discovered in the mind. So while the Buddha is considered to be like a doctor to some people, you are your own best doctor, because if you understand the symptoms that you're experiencing in the mind, like indifference or worry or anxiety, or if you're noticing that the mind is having jealousy or envy or any of these other symptoms that you're going to hear me talk about today, you'll have the tools to be able to bring in, to be able to remedy and antidote this out of your mind. So welcome to all of you to today's class, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. I'm going to be teaching you chapter 14 after our meditation. And if you've already read the chapter, you've seen what I've written there, and you can get access to these books by downloading it from our website, by taking it and go printing it. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get versions here at the temple, because it's helpful to attend these classes. But if you're also reading at the same time, you'll be able to really be fully informed about the specific teachings that you need to make your way to enlightenment. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And remember, this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. Today, we're just using it to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was used to commit the teachings to memory. So there's nothing mystical or magical about these chants. Then you're going to hear me providing some guidance during the meditation. Then there'll be a period of time where we're just all meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class and helping you learn about these healthy mental states. So if you like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, these really work well for online learning. There's also a walking position as well, but that doesn't necessarily work so well with online learning. But you can learn how to do this because you're going to need it as part of your practice. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to, and then I'll come back in with some guidance to be able to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang namami Namo สะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามะสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. Nice to see all of you guys in class today, or even if you're listening to this on the recording, welcome to everybody. Today, as I mentioned, I'm going to be sharing with you the 4 healthy mental states that need to be cultivated in the mind in order to help you to move to this enlightened mental state. Remember, what the Buddha taught is this core central path and all these other teachings that connect into it. This core central path is referred to as the Eightfold Path. I taught that back in chapter 4 and 5. And in those chapters, you started to learn individual factors and teachings that are going to help guide you to the purification of the mind, where you can get to the point where the mind's no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of these and others are eliminated from the mind. Even the slightest displeasure isn't experienced in the enlightened mind. You'll notice there's focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Your personal and professional relationships will all be blossoming. You'll be at ease in your relationships. You won't have bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships any longer. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood, that it's physically impossible for the mind to experience that. And it's these 4 healthy mental states, along with other teachings that the Buddha taught, that are going to guide you to that enlightened mental state. You would need to know the Eightfold Path, the core central teaching, using the original words of the Buddha through the resources that I share. That's what's going to help you to be able to move your mind to enlightenment. But once you have that understanding, there's other teachings that need to plug into this Eightfold Path in order to fully help you to cultivate the mind and purify it and move it to this enlightened mental state. So I'm going to share with you guys these 4 healthy mental states, what they are, the symptoms that you're going to to see when you're not practicing these and the mind doesn't have these fully cultivated. And then I'm going to explain to you how to actually cultivate these in the mind. Essentially, what we're going to be doing today is expanding your tool belt above and beyond the Eightfold Path and the other teachings you've been learning so far, so that when you notice any particular symptoms in your mind, you can employ the various remedy that you need, like a prescription. And as we go in our talk today, you guys are welcome to ask any and all questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and I'll call on you and you can unmute your mic and we'll be able to hear you to be able to ask any of your questions, and then I'll be able to answer those. So these 4 healthy mental states, as I mentioned, are plugging into the Eightfold Path. It's going to help to remedy certain challenges that you have in the unenlightened mind. These are oftentimes referred to as the Brahma-viharas, and I'll share with you where this word comes from, or this phrase comes from. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there were individuals that were referred to as Brahmin. These were Hindu priests that were essentially practicing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and it was thought that at that time, the common people couldn't actually improve their life, and that you needed to go to these Brahmin in order to be able to create any kind of improvement in your life. And you would pay these individuals a fee to do a rite, ritual, ceremony, or worship on your behalf, and then you were supposed to go home and your life was going to become better. You would become a Brahmin if you were born into a certain family. You were considered to be holy if you were born into this particular family. And there was like 15% of society was considered a Brahmin. These are like a very strong caste system that existed during that time frame. So all of us commoners, the 85% of us, were believing that you couldn't do anything to improve your life and you needed to go to these Brahmin in order to be able to have them do a rite, ritual, ceremony, and worship in order to create improvement in your life. But of course, this bred corruption, because the people that would come for a particular rite, ritual, ceremony, or worship, it would be a certain amount of money today, maybe $5, and then they would go home, their life wasn't getting better, and they would come back later for another ceremony, and now the price had gone up. And there was no rhyme or reason why that had happened. It's just because this person said that they wanted more money, and now this person believed in their mind that they were kind of locked in and stuck and they couldn't improve their life, so they needed to go get this rite, ritual, ceremony, or worship in order to improve their life. So when the Buddha came in and he saw that these kinds of things were happening because he grew up in this kind of society, he knew that this wasn't the truth, that it wasn't good luck or bad luck, it wasn't destiny or fate, it wasn't God that was controlling what we experience, it wasn't other people that were causing us to experience difficulties and struggles. Instead, it was one's own mind, that it was the lack of wisdom of the minds having the lack of wisdom of these natural laws that an individual will make unwise decisions and it'll lead to unwholesome results. But when you make wise decisions, it'll lead to wholesome results in your day-to-day life, or wholesome dhamma. So the natural law of dhamma isn't mystical or magical. It's not anything to believe in. It's not about punishments and rewards. There's no being who's overseeing it or controlling it. It's that when you make wise decisions, you will experience wholesome results, or wholesome dhamma. When you make unwise decisions, you will experience unwholesome results, or unwholesome dhamma. So these Brahmin that were teaching these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship and performing those, the Buddha knew that they weren't going to guide people to an improved life. And maybe you know that too, even today, right? But during that time frame, the pervasive view was that that's what you needed to do. So the Buddha started teaching how to train your mind, how to purify your mind. And by purifying your mind, you'll be able to make wiser and wiser decisions, leading to more and more wholesome results. But one of the things that the Brahmins were teaching is they were teaching these Brahma-viharas, or what we refer to, and the Buddha essentially referred to, as these 4 healthy mental states, because that's what ultimately needs to happen. But this word Brahma refers to God. That's what they would refer to as God. Nowadays in English we use the word God, but during that time frame they would use the word Brahma. And these Brahmin were helping people through their rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship to connect with God. What the word Vihara means is it means abode or dwelling. So the Brahmin were teaching that you needed to practice these 4 Brahma-viharas so that you could dwell with God, and that by you practicing loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, you would have a closer relationship with God and you would dwell with God. But that's not what the Buddha was teaching. The Buddha was teaching about training your mind. So while the Brahmin were teaching it in that way in order to be able to dwell with God, the Buddha knew through his own practice that he needed to practice loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity to antidote certain symptoms that were in his mind. And that's how he taught it. But you'll still see people referring to these as the Brahma-viharas because it goes back to this time frame when these Hindu priests or these Brahmin were teaching that this is the way to dwell with God. But the goal of this practice isn't to dwell with God. The goal of this practice is to purify your mind, eliminating certain pollution, certain taints, the fetters, so that now with that purified mind, you'll make wiser and wiser decisions that are leading to more and more wholesome results. So this is why I refer to these as the 4 healthy mental states, or cultivating healthy mental states, because that's the way the Buddha taught it, is that this is what's going to help to purify your mind, along with the Eightfold Path and other teachings that you need in order to get closer and closer to enlightenment, to experience the benefits of enlightenment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what these are for you and what they're actually remedying. But just understand the origins of this word, because you might still see some people referring to it as the Brahma-viharas, and you'll understand the history and the background of why they're referring to it that way. But our goal here isn't to dwell with God. Our goal is to become a better and better human being through purification of your mind and cultivating the mind to the point where you can make wiser and wiser decisions, and you can experience more and more wholesome results in your day-to-day life. And there's a core central path of the Eightfold Path that's going to guide you in how to do that. But now you're going to learn these mental states that plug into that so that you can be able to then practice the Eightfold Path more fully. So here, this first one is loving kindness. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is going to antidote the anger, the hatred, the ill will, and all those lesser versions like irritation, annoyance, and even dislike. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have the slightest dislike towards other beings. Right now, you might have certain people in your life that you like, and there are certain people that you dislike. But this is because loving kindness hasn't been fully cultivated in the mind. There are certain expectations that you have. There are certain cravings that you have. There are certain things you want this person to do. And if they do things your way, you will like them. But if they don't do things your way, you will have dislike towards them. And you might think that it's them that's causing you to dislike them. But it's actually coming from your own mind because you have these expectations of this person wanting them to be a certain way. The mind, with its arrogance and its ego, thinks that I know the way people should function in this world, and if they're not functioning my way, they're doing something wrong, and now I'm going to dislike them. Where in reality, this is just the mind's craving and its ego trying to cast onto other people certain expectations of what they should or shouldn't be doing. So you can get to the point where you understand the universal truth of impermanence, that not everybody in the world is going to function exactly the same way. People are going to do things differently, and that's okay. You can disagree with the choices and decisions that people make while still loving the person. And that's what loving kindness is going to be able to do for you, where you have active goodwill towards all beings, where you're not judging them to determine whether you should be loving and kind to them or not, but instead you're just maintaining this genuine interest in seeing them be well, that you have unconditional love towards them, that there's no condition that they have to meet in order for you to actually love them, but you just love them. Because in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, we misunderstand love. We have this lack of wisdom where actually craving, desire, attachment is masquerading as love. What we'll do is we'll meet somebody, we'll be attracted to them maybe through their appearance, think they're handsome or beautiful. We might be attracted to their financial status. We might be attracted to them intellectually, or maybe their position in society. And now we'll spend some time with that person. And at some point in our relationship, we might say to them, I love you. right? And then they say, well, I love you too. And it's like, well, I've fallen in love with you. Well, I've fallen in love with you too, right? And now we spend time together in love with each other. And now we go through life, and in certain times you get angry and frustrated at them, and they get angry and frustrated at you because you have certain expectations of them. You want them to be a certain way. And when they're that way, you're happy. But when they don't do things your way, you get angry or frustrated. And the same thing with them is they have certain expectations or wants in their mind. And in some cases you can meet those, in some cases you can't because of impermanence. And now they get angry and frustrated because you're not doing things their way. And now you break up. You say, I've fallen out of love with you. I don't love you anymore. I've lost my passion, and we need to end our relationship. And now you might be angry or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person or whatever it is, but nonetheless, you now in the mind think that you have fallen out of love with this person. What's really happened is you fell into craving with this person, where you had certain expectations of them, and then you fell out of craving. Where initially, when you're in that honeymoon phase, they started meeting all your expectations, or your expectations were kind of low at that point, and they were meeting all your expectations. But as time went on, your expectations grew, and they couldn't meet all of those, and you couldn't meet all of their expectations. You got to the point where maybe you were like, I love you, therefore I want you to be with me because you make me happy. And now when you're with me, I'm happy, but when you're away from me, I'm not happy anymore. I feel miserable or frustrated or irritated. That's not actual love. That's craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love. So now an individual will struggle in their relationships because they think they're falling in love and they think they're falling out of love with individuals. There's no such thing as conditional love, but we might call this conditional love. That if you meet all my conditions, if you meet my expectations, I will say I love you, and I will function as if I love you. But if you stop meeting my expectations and what I want you to do, I don't love you anymore. This isn't actual love. This is expectations. This is selfishness. This is, as long as you do things my way, I'm going to treat you like I love you. But when you stop doing things my way, I don't love you anymore. So in that kind of situation, you're going to have anger and hatred and ill will and irritation and annoyance and dislike because your mind's wanting this person to be a certain way. It's expecting things to be a certain way. You're falling in love and out of love with people, but in reality, what you're doing is you're having a situation where they're meeting your expectations, so you say you love them, but then when they stop doing what you want them to do, you say you don't love them anymore. This isn't love. What you would like to get to is unconditional love, where you can just love everybody, that it's unconditional, that you understand that people are going to do things differently, and you can have this active goodwill towards all beings, where you have a genuine interest in see everyone be well, and you understand that they're going to do things differently than you. This is normal. That because of impermanence, not everyone's going to do things your way. So if you can get to the point where you have active goodwill towards all beings and you're not judging them and you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well, you can get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious, where you don't have the bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships. But you need to understand what is loving kindness, and you need to cultivate it in your mind. Sure, you need to knock down these cravings, desires, these wants and expectations, this longing, yearning for everybody to be a certain way. That's what you're working on through the Eightfold Path. That's what's guiding you to be able to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. But at the same time, you need to bring in this loving kindness so that you can relate to all beings in a loving and kind way, where they don't have to earn your love, but you just love them without any preconditions to have this mental state of love. Loving kindness is not a feeling. This is one of the challenges that people have about love. They think it's a feeling. A feeling arises, changes, and fades away. A mental state can be permanent, where you just always love everyone, where they don't have to do anything to earn your love, so therefore there's nothing they can do for you to fall out of love with them. So when you're practicing actual love or true love, it's I love you, therefore I would like to see you be well. It's not about me. Over here, when there's craving, desire, attachment masquerading as love, it's all about me. It's all about what I want. And if you do things my way, then hey, I'll say I love you and act like I love you and function like I love you. But when you stop doing things my way, all bets are off. that's not actual love. That's craving, desire, attachment. But when you cultivate loving kindness in your mind and you can relate to all beings harmoniously, and you don't have any conditions that they have to meet in order for you to be loving and kind, now your mind is liberated from anger and hatred because you don't have these expectations stacked up of how people have to be in order for you to love them. You can just love all beings equally. So one of the things that the Buddha teaches in order to be able to help you to accomplish this is he teaches you that any being that you come in contact with has previously been your mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, or some other relative. So I know that some of you guys haven't necessarily independently verified the cycle of rebirth, but this is something that you can actually do where you can independently verify that the cycle of rebirth is true. And when you do that and you're able to see that there's been countless lives in the past, well, then you can come to the understanding that any being you've come in contact with has previously been a relative of yours. So maybe Ted and I used to be sisters when we were snakes or something like that. Or maybe Marcy was my grandfather when I was a bird or something like this, right? So we've all been family members at different times. So one of the things you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're changing your perspective of how you walk out into the world and you experience the world. So rather than going out into the world with this perception of everybody is a stranger and everybody's out to get me and they're going to try to take what I have, and I now need to be afraid of these strangers and worried about what they may or may not do to me. Instead, you can go out into the world thinking that everybody is a family member that has previously been a relative of yours, and these are just individuals that you haven't met yet, and now I can be loving and kind to all these individuals. I don't need to be bitter and harsh and hostile. I don't need to be scared of people. I don't need to hold on to this perspective of everybody's a stranger and they're out to get me, but instead I can be loving and kind to all beings. And as you put out that love and that kindness, more and more, this is what comes back to you. So by changing your perspective and no longer seeing people as strangers, but instead family members, this can be really helpful for you. So here in Thailand, one of the things that we do is in Thai language, when we go out into the world, we actually refer to people as family members. So when I walk into a store and I see that older lady behind the counter, even though I've never met her before, I would refer to her as grandmother, using the actual word like grandma, how much is that chocolate bar, right? Or if I'm at a restaurant and there's food servers, I might say, brother or sister, I need a glass of water. Would it be possible for you to bring me a glass of water? Or if I see somebody on the street sweeping the street, I might say, uncle, good morning. How are you? How are you doing today? Right? So you go out into the world thinking about everyone around you as a family member, and now it's like, wow, the world can really open up for you instead of this darkness and this bitterness and hostility, this fear that you might walk into the world with, thinking that everybody's out to get you. So the way that you can cultivate the mind to accomplish this loving kindness and get rid of these unwholesome qualities of anger, hatred, ill will, irritation, frustration, annoyance, the bitterness, the hostility, and the dislike towards others is not only knocking down the craving, desire, attachment using all the techniques in the Eightfold Path, but also bringing in the loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in your day-to-day life. The loving kindness meditation is a different type of meditation where you're essentially rewiring the mind to be loving and kind. You're focusing inwardly. You're cultivating the mind and essentially rewiring the mind. I've taught this at different times, and if you haven't learned it yet with me, you can look at the recordings and things like this, or you can take one of the classes, courses, or retreats where I teach it. Because if you're doing loving kindness in the morning, this meditation, it's like filling up your gas tank with loving kindness. And then you go out into the world through your daily interactions of your intention, speech, and actions, and you're more loving and kind with the people around you. And as you're being loving and kind with the people around you, you'll see more and more over time love and kindness coming back to you. But you shouldn't be practicing loving kindness because you want people to be loving and kind with you. This kind of negates the aspect of the natural law of Dhamma. You need to just just understand that it's a wise decision to go out into the world and be loving and kind with people. And over multiple weeks and months and years, you'll see more and more people being loving and kind with you. So this is where loving kindness plugs into the Eightfold Path, and now through your intention, speech, and actions, you're more loving and kind with the individuals around you. And what you're putting out, more and more is going to come back to you. So you're going to need a well-developed practice of loving kindness meditation, where what I suggest you do is in the morning, you do loving kindness meditation, so you go out into the world and you can be loving and kind more and more. And you might feel like there's a wall between you and other people. And when you're doing this meditation, it can feel like there's this wall and you don't really have that aspect of love and kindness in your mind. And that's the whole reason why it's important to do this meditation, so that you can break down this wall. And you might be a little bit hesitant to go out into the world and smile and be cheerful and be glad and be loving and kind with people. But you'll never break through that wall if you just hold on to the darkness that the mind has. And even though you go out into the world and be loving and kind with people, somebody might scowl at you, or somebody might say some snide remark or something like that. But if you go out into the world without any expectation of how someone would respond to you, even if you're being loving and kind and someone else is being bitter and harsh and hostile, you know what? That's okay. You would be interested in practicing loving kindness without the expectation that somebody will receive that loving kindness in a certain way. So this way you can break through that wall where you're not judging other people. And then you would like to use the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, that whenever you notice the unwholesome qualities of anger, hatred, ill will, or any of those lesser versions like irritation, annoyance, and dislike is coming up in the mind, if you can see that with your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, then you can apply right effort to eliminate those unwholesome qualities and cultivate the wholesome quality. This is where you're applying the prescription. Whereas if you see the symptom of anger, hatred, and ill will, then you know what the remedy is for that. The remedy is loving kindness. So you get rid, by cutting off and letting go of those unwholesome qualities, and you arise this wholesome quality of loving kindness. And this is where over time you can have more and more loving kindness permeating in your mind, where it'll be physically impossible for the mind to actually be angry or frustrated or irritated or any other of those other qualities. So you can get to the point where your mind's fully cultivated this loving kindness. And each day when you're doing loving kindness meditation and you're practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life, and you're practicing mindfulness and you're applying right effort to cut off and let go of these unwholesome qualities, you're not going to know how much of the anger and hatred and these other things that you're eliminating from the mind. But when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. Because it'll be 6 months, a year, 2 years. You haven't been angry with anybody. You haven't been frustrated with anybody. You haven't even been irritated or have the slightest dislike towards another being. But as long as those are being experienced in the mind, then the mind's not fully cultivated with this loving kindness. It's not fully developed and fully matured. So you're going to notice with the bodily sensations that there's going to be these unwholesome qualities arising. If you develop your breathing mindfulness meditation so that you can develop those 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects, when you notice the bodily sensations like tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, or pressure in the skull, you know that this anger or this frustration or irritation or annoyance is arising. You would like to notice that as a bodily sensation and cut that off and let it go with right effort and clearing that out of the mind, and then arise this loving kindness. If you're in a business meeting and you're starting to have hatred towards somebody in the meeting, notice that with your mindfulness, cut that off and let it go, and arise this loving kindness in the mind. So each day as you're practicing this, you're going to be wearing away your anger, hatred, ill will, but you're not going to know how much of it you're wearing away. But when it's completely gone, you'll know that, because it'll be an extended period of time and you won't experience any hatred or ill will. The Buddha gives a very good analogy on this to be able to help you understand what you're doing here with all of these healthy mental states and any of the other mental states that you're cultivating. He talks about this digging tool, that if you're digging with a tool that has a wooden handle, each day you're wearing away wood from this handle of this digging tool. You're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away, but you are wearing away wood each day from the handle. And then as you're digging, eventually you're going to get to the point where you've completely exhausted this particular digging tool. You're going to know that. You're not going to know each day how much wood you're wearing away from the handle, but when it's completely exhausted and you need to replace the handle, you're going to know that. So it's the same thing with any of these unhealthy and unwholesome mental states. You're not going to know when you're applying the wholesome qualities in these tools and techniques exactly how much anger and hatred you're wearing away each individual day. But when it's completely gone, you'll know that. So you're going to need to have confidence. You're going to need to have dedication, determination, and diligence to apply these techniques on a day-to-day basis. And just know that you're wearing away the anger. And you'll know like 2 months down the road, 6 months down the road, you're like, whoa, I feel less angry. You'll notice when people come into traffic and you don't get angry and frustrated any longer, that you're quite content and quite peaceful in these situations. But you might still have anger in other situations. So like for me, for example, I had worked out the anger and hatred towards my mom first, because I had a lot of resentment for things that happened in our childhood. So there was a period of time where I was really working intensely on that. And there was a period of time where I didn't have any anger in my mind whatsoever towards my mom. But I still had some anger towards my wife, for example. And it took me more time to work that out. So you're going to notice certain relationships start clearing up for you little by little. And then eventually you're going to see where your anger is completely exhausted in the mind. And you'll know that. With each individual relationship, you'll notice that, because it'll be a really long time that I was ever angry or hatred towards my mom, but I still had this anger towards my wife that I had to work out. But then eventually, when you clear out all these relationships, the mind will only be loving and kind. And this is the way you do it, through loving kindness meditation, and then practicing loving kindness through your intention, speech, and actions through your daily life. And then whenever you see with your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, that any of these unwholesome qualities are arising, you apply right effort to cut those off and eliminate them from the mind, and then bring in the wholesome qualities. And this will help the loving kindness to more and more permeate through the mind. So remember, you can't go out today and just snap your fingers and instantly become loving and kind, but with gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, that's what you can experience. And that's what you're working towards. So don't be upset with yourself if you are angry in certain situations or you are frustrated in certain situations. Just understand you're a work in progress, and you're working towards a better mind and better life, better and better relationships. And that's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Then there's the healthy mental state of compassion. This is concern for the misfortune of others, where if you see somebody having an unfortunate situation, that you have concern for their misfortune. This is a mental state. This doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily take any action. If you take action based on your compassion, that's something different. But what the Buddha is teaching you is to cultivate the compassion in the mind where you have concern for the misfortune of others. If you're not practicing compassion from the middle way, you'll be on either side of this. You'll either have indifference, where you could care less what happens to other people. That's indifference, where you could just care less about what other people experience or their misfortune. Or you'll be all the way on the other side of this compassion, where you'll have worry and anxiety for things that are happening in the world. You'll see that there's a war, or you'll see poverty or famine or something like this, and you'll be worried and have anxiety about any number of different things. And when you're experiencing either of these aspects of life, your mind can't be peaceful and joyful. When you're just like, so what? Who cares if that homeless man doesn't have any food? Or who cares if that woman gets abused by her husband? She's the one who's doing it, right? You might be indifferent and kind of blaming other people for the things like this. Or you might be worried and have anxiety, like, oh my goodness, that child doesn't have food. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? This world is so harsh and hostile. Oh my gosh. And you might be so worried and having anxiety. And that's because the mind's not in the middle practicing compassion. And you would like to get to the point where your mind is more compassionate. There's things that the Buddha teaches you here too that'll help change your perspective to be able to bring this compassion in the mind more and more. one of the things that he shares is that because we have experienced so many different lives in the past, that any misfortune that we see somebody experiencing, that we also experience that same misfortune, either in this life or some previous life. And this can help you to arise some compassion in the mind, that if you see that person who's homeless on the sidewalk and is having a lack of hygiene perhaps, and having difficulties finding a place to sleep or food, rather than just being indifferent about that, with your loving kindness you can think about this person as a family member. And then with your compassion, you can understand that you've also experienced this at some time in the past. Either in this life or some previous life, you've also been homeless at some point. So now you can put yourself in those shoes of that individual to be able to cultivate some compassion where you have concern for their misfortune. Whether you choose to do something about it or not is going to be unique in each situation. The Buddhist teachings aren't plug and play. They're not black and white. It's not like every time you see somebody struggling, you have to do this, right? Because that would be permanence. In each situation, the variables are going to be different. In some situations, you might choose to act upon your compassion and start practicing some generosity and purchase this person some food who is having difficulties getting food. But in other situations, the variables could be different. Maybe you don't have the funds. Maybe you're late for a business meeting. Maybe you're walking down the street and you don't have the ability to help this person. But at least if you can maintain the mental state of compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of this individual, now you're practicing the teachings where you're not indifferent and you're not having worry and anxiety, but instead you're in the middle where there's concern. The way that you get to this is that you practice right mindfulness from the Eightfold Path, where you have awareness of the mind. And anytime you see these unwholesome qualities of indifference, worry, or anxiety related to other people's misfortune, then you apply right effort to eliminate those unwholesome qualities and arise this wholesome quality of compassion. So when you see that you're indifferent or you're worried or having anxiety, you know what the prescription is, or the antidote for that is the compassion. But whether you choose to act upon it is a whole different question that you need to decide on a case-by-case basis. And in some situations, you might act upon it. In other cases, you may not. You have to decide for yourself in each situation. So this is compassion, the concern for the misfortune of others. And it's going to antidote indifference, worry, and anxiety. And you're going to need the right mindfulness or awareness of mind that you're cultivating in breathing mindfulness meditation to be aware of the unwholesome qualities. And then when you see those unwholesome qualities of indifference, worry, or anxiety related to the misfortune of others, you bring in right effort to eliminate the unwholesome qualities and arise the wholesome. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys might have about loving kindness or compassion. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I apologize for those of you guys that are online. 1 second. For some reason, the people on the live stream cannot hear me. I apologize. It looks like we've got some people in Zoom. For some reason, my microphone is not working. I tested this before class and it was working. Okay, we've got it on now. So apologize for anybody who might still be hanging out in the live stream. The microphone wasn't working. For some reason, there was some impermanence there. So that tends to be what happens from time to time because of the universal truth of impermanence. So even though I tested the mic, it still wasn't working during the live stream. But nonetheless, we have some questions coming in. We have one from Mike here in Zoom. You have mentioned the past lives and rebirth can be independently verified. Will you be teaching us how? Yes, if you look in volume 11, chapter 105, you will see 17 different criteria that I share in there about how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. I don't suggest that somebody goes off and does that at the beginning. That's why I don't teach it as part of the group learning program, because what's happened in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. And what's happened in the future, what may or may not happen, it hasn't happened yet, so it doesn't actually matter right now. So what I focus people on in the foundational programs is developing your practice to train your mind, because right now you're in this human state, which is the very best existence to be able to have, where you can learn and grow and develop and actually get to enlightenment. So it's best to focus on that at the beginning. But if you're really eager to go out and independently verify this, you can look in volume 11, chapter 105. but it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because that's usually about a year and a half, 2 years into someone's development on the path, and that's a better time to actually approach it. But it is there if you would like to actually learn it more readily than a year and a half or 2 years from your start. But there's certain teachings in there that you're going to need to learn. Like there's certain teachings in volume 5 that volume 11 is dependent on. So that's why it really is helpful to learn these things in a sequential order. But I have it in there if you would like to learn it. Okay, it looks like Josh has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Could you speak a little bit more as to how compassion is a remedy for anxiety and for worry?
Sure. So if somebody's like watching the news and they're having difficulties with seeing people's misfortunes, their mind is going to worry and have anxiety. What's causing that is craving, desire, attachment. The mind is worried because it's craving for everybody to experience a certain thing. It's craving that permanence. That's why the worry and anxiety is there. So what the mind needs to do is it needs to eliminate its craving, desire, attachment in order to understand that the world can't be permanently one particular way, that there are going to be beings that experience misfortune. So you can be eliminating your craving, desire, attachment. But as you're doing that, the mind can oftentimes swing over to indifference, where now maybe the mind started out worried and having anxiety, but now it might swing to indifference. This is the two opposite sides of compassion. Because of the misfortune of others, someone can experience this. So by bringing in the compassion where you have concern for their misfortune, you're not worried about them, you're not having those kinds of things, but instead you have concern. Because with a worried mind, this individual sees all the problems. They see all the problems in the world, and there's worry and anxiety. And this is where the mind's discontent, because it's having a craving for the world to be a certain way and fixed. But you can actually maintain concern without having any discontentness, where it's like, hey, I'm really concerned about the world. Like I am personally, I'm concerned about the world. I think the world is in a very dark period of time, but I don't have worry because I understand the solutions. So you can have concern for others' misfortune where you're not worried. And part of that concern is that you don't just see the problems, but you actually understand the solutions. That in order for the world to become a better and better place, each individual person needs to decide to train their own mind. Whereas if you think that there's something wrong in the world and you need to go out and right the world, now an individual sees all the problems, they can be worried and having anxiety. But if you can maintain your concern where you understand the problems, but you also understand the solutions, now you can be in the middle and be peaceful and joyful without that worry and anxiety. But you also need to be working on eliminating the cravings, desires, attachments that's producing that. And that's where the Eightfold Path comes in.
And so, what about personal cravings, desires, and attachment? Is self-compassion the remedy for that?
So if you were worried about your own misfortunes, yes.
Yeah, by some attachment that I have to, I don't know, a specific outcome or something like that, or some shame or some guilt.
Yeah, at the heart of that, you need to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. That's what's going to help you to eliminate your worry and anxiety. But at the same time, you can bring in this compassion. So there's typically what you're doing on the path is you're eliminating some certain unwholesome quality and you're bringing in a certain wholesome quality, and that's what's going to help to uplift the mind and purify it. So the unwholesome quality that you're eliminating is craving, desire, attachment, and you're learning that through the Eightfold Path and all the techniques there. But then as you're eliminating that, there's like this void because you've eliminated this unwholesome quality, and now you bring in this wholesome quality, which is now going to bring the mind to the middle where you can have concern for your own misfortune, but now you don't worry or have anxiety about it. You get to the point where there's concern, and now you can act upon that concern in whichever way you think is appropriate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Thank you guys for letting me know about the sound. Now let me see if there's anything on Facebook. I'm not seeing anything on Facebook. So let me continue in with the next two Brahma-viharas, or healthy mental states. This is sympathetic joy and equanimity. What sympathetic joy is it's joy for others' success even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the opposite of envy or jealousy or pride. So in certain situations, you might be having sympathetic joy, right? Like maybe you've gone to a certain vacation spot and your friends or family are also informing you that they're going to take a vacation to that particular place too. And you're like, oh, that's wonderful. You're going to really enjoy the Bahamas. Or, oh, you're going to Mexico. Oh, I had the best time there ever. Or, oh, you're headed to Thailand. Oh, that's a great place. You're going to really have a great time. So you might have this sympathetic joy where you have joy for their success, even though you didn't contribute to it. But in other situations, you might have envy or jealousy. Like maybe you're at work and you're applying for a certain promotion. Maybe there's a certain new job title, a new position that's opened up, and you apply for this, and some other coworkers apply for it too. Maybe it's more money, better title, maybe it's more responsibility, and they get the job instead of you. And maybe now you're envious or jealous. And in this situation, your mind's not going to be performing optimally. Those unwholesome qualities that are arising in your mind, you might even take that out on other people. You might think that that jealousy or envy is actually being caused by other people. And now you might become unskillful due to your envy or your jealousy. So you can antidote this with sympathetic joy, where you bring in this joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. You're going to need to bring that into the mind and fully develop it and fully cultivate it. Bring it to full perfection and full development. Because if there's even the slightest bit of envy or jealousy in your mind towards anybody for anything, that means that there's still craving, desire, attachment in the mind, and this sympathetic joy hasn't been fully developed and cultivated in the mind. So the way that you develop this is through right mindfulness, that you're aware of this jealousy and envy that is arising, and then you apply right effort to eliminate that unwholesome quality and bring in and cultivate the wholesome quality. And in some situations, this can be very challenging for you. When that person walks by your desk and is maybe gloating, and maybe they have conceit about the job that they actually just got and you didn't get it, it can be very challenging for you to have this sympathetic joy. But you need to understand that that gloating, that conceit that they're having, that's on them. That's affecting their mind, and that's going to be problematic for them. And you're not interested in that. And you're not interested in the envy or the jealousy arising in your mind. So this is about your practice. It's not about what other people are choosing to do. So you would like to arise this sympathetic joy, where maybe there's this wall again that you have to kind of break through. And maybe all you can kind of do in that situation is just kind of smile a little bit and say, congratulations on your new position. Very pleased for you, right? And maybe that's what you do in that situation. But each situation that you're confronted with, where you notice envy and jealousy arising, you practice more and more and more, where you'll arise this practice of sympathetic joy, where more and more you break down that wall of envy and jealousy, and you can start having more joy for other people's success. And where you see people experiencing fortunate situations, it doesn't mean that you have to now be jealous and envious of that. And one of the things that the Buddha helps you to be able to cultivate this in your mind is, just like he says that in the past lives or in this life, you've experienced any misfortune that other people have experienced. He says the same thing about fortunate things. He says if you see anybody experiencing anything fortunate, you've already experienced that, either in this life or some previous life. So if you see like some famous celebrity who's, famous and fortunate with money and all these kinds of things, you might be jealous or envious of that. But what you can remind yourself is, I've already experienced this. Maybe in this life or some previous life. Why do you need to do it again? You've already done it. Or if you see somebody driving some fancy car, maybe you've already had a nice vehicle at some other time in the past. So no need for you to be jealous and envious towards their fortunate situation. So this will help you to cultivate that sympathetic joy. But at your right mindfulness and your right effort, that's going to allow you to really bring this into the mind, because you need to spot those symptoms. And then when you see that, apply right effort to eliminate the unwholesome quality and cultivate the wholesome quality. Then there's equanimity. Equanimity is calmness, composure, evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. But then there's this other component of equanimity, which is treating everyone impartially. So I'm going to explain to you each aspect of this. So if you were in a situation where maybe you got a phone call that your mom's been in a terrible car accident and she's being rushed to the hospital and she's in the back of an ambulance, your mind might become uncalm and it's all shaken up. And now you lack mindfulness or awareness of your mind. You lack concentration or focus. And now you make unwise decisions that is going to lead to problematic situation. Maybe you grab your car keys and you run out the door and you race across town. And maybe you actually get into a car accident yourself. At the very least, you're going to show up to the hospital with a muddled mind. And now when you're talking to the doctors and nurses, you're not understanding what they have to say, and you're having difficulties making decisions to help your mom. But if you can maintain your calmness and composure, eliminating any restlessness, worry, or anxiety, or overactive mind, now you can have calmness of your mind. You can have mindfulness or awareness of mind. You can have concentration or focus and clarity, and you can make wise decisions that's leading to wholesome results. Because in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to be making wise decisions consistently for a long-term period. So you're not going to be able to make wise decisions as long as your mind is shaken up. If it's uncalm, you're not going to be able to get to your wisdom. So if you can develop equanimity in your mind, once again by eliminating cravings, desires, attachments, then you can arise this calmness and this composure. Whereas if you want mom to be permanently healthy, when you find out that she's unhealthy and she's had this car accident, you'll be shaken up by that. But if you understand these natural laws, then you understand that mom can't be permanently healthy. It's impossible. So when you get this phone call that she's being rushed to the hospital, then you can understand, you know what, this is the very best thing that can happen for her, that she's in the back of an ambulance with emergency medical technicians and they are attending to her care. And that's the best thing for her. She's about to arrive at a hospital where they have sophisticated equipment and doctors and nurses with knowledge that's going to be able to help her. There's nothing about racing across town that's going to help her. Right? So let me just calmly get my stuff together, get in the car, and get over to the hospital so that I can now talk to the doctors and nurses and start helping mom. Because by maintaining your calmness, you'll have mindfulness and concentration, which now you can access your wisdom and start helping mom. So it doesn't help you to allow the mind to be restless or worried or having anxiety or overactive mind. Sometimes people think it's the love that's causing me to have this shaken up mind. No, it's not the love. It's the craving for permanence, wanting mom to be permanently healthy when it's not possible. Every single one of us are going to experience death, including mom. She's not permanent. So she's going to get aging, she's going to have sickness, she's going to experience death. And if we crave permanence, when mom's experiencing this, we'll be shaken up by it. But that's not the way that you have to live your life. There's this better way of life where you can have calmness and composure. So with your mindfulness, when you notice that uncalm, settled aspect of the mind arising as a feeling, whether it's restlessness, worry, or anxiety, or overactive mind, you need to be able to spot that with your awareness of mind or your mindfulness, and then apply right effort to eliminate that unwholesome quality and bring in the wholesome quality of calmness and composure, right? So you can just take a couple of breaths before you walk out the door and be sure your mind is calm and composed. And this is going to help you get to wise decisions more and more and more. Then the root word of the word equanimity is equal. So there's this other component to equanimity, which is treating everyone impartially or treating everyone fairly. So if you were in a personal or professional environment and you weren't treating people fairly, this isn't going to go very well for you. Like say I work with about 6 or 8 other people and I have these 2 favorite coworkers and I'm going to bring them chocolate donuts in the morning and I give it to those 2 individual coworkers. Well, the other 4 or 6 people, they're going to get jealous because they're not maybe practicing this path. They have craving, desire, attachment, and now they see you giving those donuts to other people. And while they're producing their own envy and their own jealousy, they don't know that, right? They have this wrong view. And now they're associating those painful feelings of envy and jealousy to you. and now they push you away, or they're bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they put their expectations on you. So one of the things that the Buddha is teaching you is not only how to cultivate your own mind to be peaceful and joyful, but he's teaching you how to live harmoniously with all beings. And there's lots of unenlightened beings in the world. There's lots of people who aren't on this path. So if you were treating people unfairly, maybe you're bringing in donuts for 2 coworkers and not the others. Or maybe as a boss or an employer, you're treating some employees one way and other employees the other way. Or maybe as a parent, you're treating some children one way and other children another way. Or maybe you're being nice and kind to one set of neighbors, but not another set of neighbors. Right? This is not going to go well for you in your personal and professional relationships. So you're going to need to treat everyone impartially in all these different environments. Whereas if you're going to bring in something for your coworkers, be sure to bring in something for everyone. But if you work in a large company like 100, 200, 300 people, you're not going to be able to bring in donuts for everybody. That's going to be pretty costly, right? So maybe what you do instead, if you'd like to practice some generosity in the business community in your professional life, is you bring in a couple of dozen donuts, you put them in the conference room, and you send out a wide group email. Hey, everybody, I brought in donuts. There's 2 dozens of donuts in the conference room. You're welcome to help yourself. So now people choose to come, and the latecomers who come late and then there's no donuts available for them, they understand that it was their decision that led to not having a donut. But from your side, you were practicing where you treated everybody impartially. You gave everybody the option to come get a donut, for example, or a bagel or some fruit or whatever it is that you would like to offer to your coworkers. So this is one of the things that you need to cultivate in the mind, is not only the equanimity to be calm and composed in difficult situations, but you need to treat everybody impartially, or else you're going to see people getting jealous and envious, and you're going to see your relationships really struggle. One of the things that you need to be able to get to is where you have harmonious relationships with all individuals. You're not interested in negative relationships with anybody. There shouldn't be any space in your life for a negative relationship. And this is one of the things that's going to help you to do that, is treat everyone impartially. So where you see your mind's not doing that with your mindfulness, bring in the right effort to eliminate that and bring in the wholesome quality of treating everybody impartially. Do you guys have any questions on either of these 2 healthy mental states of sympathetic, joy, and equanimity? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share one more thing with you that isn't part of the Brahma-viharas or the 4 healthy mental states, but it is a practice that you're going to need to cultivate, and I consider it to be a healthy mental state. So I call this out in this particular chapter, even though it's not part of the Brahma-viharas, because this is something that you're going to need to practice in order to get to enlightenment, and that is generosity. If you weren't practicing generosity, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. This is where you have the interest to practice, and you frequently give your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. So you would like to be able to give and share your time, effort, energy, and resources, but you need to be able to do this without any expectation of anything in return, because if you have an expectation for something, then it's not generosity. There's still a craving, desire, attachment there. The reason why generosity is so important is because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you'll tend to hold on to things, and you'll become selfish, and you won't want to share. You'll want things to be self-satisfying all the time because the mind's craving those pleasant feelings, and it thinks that if I can acquire all of these things, mine, then somehow you think that that would create a better life for yourself. Well, you do need to acquire certain things in order to help you, but you also need to be able to get to the point where you're willing to give and share with other people without any expectation of anything in return. So you would like to be practicing generosity, because that's going to train your mind to let go, where you can be joyful in giving and sharing with others. But you need to do this in a way that you're not going to have expectations from other people. Sometimes when we do and practice generosity, there might still be an underlying expectation there. So if you've ever held the door for somebody and you expected them to say thank you and they didn't say thank you, You might get angry or frustrated in that situation. And that's because of your expectation. And that wasn't pure generosity. You need to be able to understand the universal truth of impermanence, that some people are going to walk through this door and say thank you, and other people aren't. And that's just impermanence. But if you're holding this door with an expectation of a thank you, not everyone's going to say thank you, so therefore you're going to experience discontentedness. So you need to get to the point where you don't even have the expectation of a thank you when you're practicing generosity. Instead, you would like to practice generosity for only one reason. The reason why is because it's enhancing the quality of your mind. It's training your mind to let go, where you can live open-handedly, being joyful in giving and sharing with others. The Buddha has this great teaching here, and he has other teachings too about generosity, but I typically share this when I'm talking about generosity because it really helps to illustrate how important generosity is. The Buddha says, "Monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds, even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful. They would not eat without having shared it, if there were someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds." So what's this results of giving and sharing that the Buddha knows that other people don't know? Well, this is enlightenment. The results of giving and sharing is that peace and that joy, that permanent mental state. And the Buddha understands this mental state and others don't. And because people don't understand, they eat without having shared it. Because it's generosity that's going to help you to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. So if beings knew the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. So in situations where you're eating, you might decide to share your food, because in the unenlightened state, the mind functions very much like an animal. We're not animals, we're human beings. And this path to enlightenment is to become a better and better human being. But because the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal, people will tend to hoard their food, just like an animal. It's like mine, 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 mine. But what you would like to do is start learning how to give and share. Here in Asia, we usually put the food in the middle of the table and everybody just shares it. So here in Asia, there's certain people that are impoverished and they have difficulties affording food. So when you're sitting down with a family of 4, 6, or 8, you only have a certain amount of food to be able to eat. And at the end of this meal, not everybody's going to be full at the end of the meal. But if we put the food in the middle and everybody's considerate and just takes 2 or 3 spoonfuls and puts it on their plate, and then you eat those 2 or 3 spoonfuls, and now you take another 2 or 3 spoonfuls and you eat that, at the end of this meal, everybody's gotten a little bit of food, but not everybody's full. And this is one of the ways to give and share, where we're not hoarding like animals. So if you would like to practice those kinds of things, you can practice that, where you're not just loading up your plate with a bunch of stuff and hoarding it and then eating it, but put your food in the middle and share it with others. This can be a really great practice for you. Or if you go get a bag of potato chips and you open this bag of potato chips and there's friends around you, you could pass the bag of potato chips around the people that are there. Maybe if the bag comes back and there's only one potato chip, you go get another bag, right? Just eat your one potato chip and go get another bag. No big deal. It's not that expensive. You can go get another bag of potato chips. So if you'd like to practice generosity, you need to even do this from the middle way. Whereas if you practice generosity extensively, where you weren't given thought or consideration to your own basic needs, then you're going to overextend yourself and you're not going to have what you need in order to sustain your life. But if you're all the way on the other side, where you weren't practicing generosity at all, you would be quite selfish and your mind would be holding on. You would like to come to the middle, where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources, without any expectation of anything in return. And this is enhancing the quality of your mind, training it to give and share and let go. And now you will see in your day-to-day life that it'll be easier for you to let go. When that anger and that frustration and that agitation is arising, you'll be able to let go. But if you're not practicing generosity and all the other teachings, your mind's not going to be able to let go. And you're going to keep being angry and frustrated and irritated over and over. So the generosity is there to help you train your mind to let go. So let me know if you guys have any questions here on generosity. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay. I'm sorry, I still can't pronounce your name. Can you?
Hi, it's Rotem.
Rotem. I have trouble seeing. Is it Rotem? Okay, Rotem. All right. I got it now. I won't forget it.
I have two questions. The first one is regarding generosity, and the second one is actually about something that happened to me this week. About generosity, I found it that one way for me to practice generosity is to start giving like money or food to homeless people that they usually ask, like every time when you walk here in my city, so you might see a homeless person, and most people ignore them. So I'm not ignoring them, but sometimes they ask me for like cigarettes. It's very common for them to ask for cigarettes, and then I don't feel comfortable with giving them cigarettes from one hand because it's not healthy and so on. But on the other hand, I know that what at this point will make them happy. So I'm not sure like how to act. Should I help them be happy with this thing or just go with what I believe that I don't want to buy cigarettes to anyone?
Yeah, so what's making them happy is their craving, desire, attachment. That because they have a craving for these substances, when they get it, their mind experiences conditional happiness. So that's not actually helping them, and it's also causing harm to their body. So I agree. I wouldn't give someone cigarettes. That's unwise, in my opinion. But if you see somebody that needs food or some other basic necessity to sustain life, there's no harm in actually sharing that if you would like to do that. And that's what I would do if I was you, is share resources that can help them to be able to sustain their life rather than something that's damaging their life.
Yeah, so this is what I usually suggest them, like, can I buy you food or something to drink? But not always they want to, and sometimes it's just like mad about me for offering that, and I'll just help them with what they need. Someone really yelled at me, like, I asked you for something specific, why can't you give me what I asked for? And I just assume he's not going to be Buddhist soon. So, yeah, I usually ask myself,
So in that situation, if you're offering food and they get angry with you and they say, why don't you just give me cigarettes, and they start, getting upset with you, I would just walk away if I was you. Because in that situation, they're having craving, desire, attachment, and now they're becoming unskillful. And one of the best things to do is just walk away. Because if you feed into that, then it's just encouraging them to continue to be unskillful. And you're not going to be able to help them in that situation. And if they're turning down your food out of wanting the cigarettes, that means that they're not very hungry, right? So they don't need this food. So if I was you, I would just walk away.
Okay. And I have another question. So we're talking about not expecting things from the people around us, and I'm trying to think about it. It's not easy for me, but I had a situation with my employees that work for me, that work with me, that I have one employee, which is great. He's really great. He's doing everything great. But there is specific thing that is very important in my business, and she's constantly not doing it right. So at the first time, I just told her, can you please remember to do that? And the second time again. And today was the third time, and it's very critical for my business. And I found myself getting very frustrated and angry about her. And how can I not expect her to do stuff that I'm paying her for? She's my employee. This is her job, and she is good. I cannot say I just fire her and take up myself out of the situation, because she is good employee. I want her to be in this business. I just want her to do this specific thing, and I'm getting very frustrated when she's not doing that. And how can I have a relationship of like I'm the business owner and she's my employee without expecting her to do stuff.
Yeah, so what you would like to be able to do is have goals and objectives for your employees and be guiding them towards those goals and objectives while realizing that they are imperfect beings just like you, and they're going to have certain struggles and challenges along the way. So initially, it sounds like you talked to her and she said, okay, I'll take care of that. And then she still didn't do it. And then you talked to her again and she still didn't do it. So this is where you got to change your approach, where you've got to sit down and start asking her questions, where you sit down in maybe in a quiet room or in an office and you say, okay, I don't know this person's name, but let's just say she's Rebecca. Okay, Rebecca, we talked twice already about this particular goal and objective that I have for you. And I thought that we had a really good understanding that you were going to take care of this. But for some reason, it hasn't happened yet. And I would just like to see, what is it that you need from me? Or what is the understanding that you need? What is it that you're lacking that's hindering you from doing this, so that I can be sure that you take care of this, because it's very important for our business. And I would like to just support you and help you to get whatever it is that you need, whether it's wisdom or some material product or a resource, so that you can actually fulfill this goal and objectives. Can you help me to understand where the shortcoming is so that we can resolve this and I can rely on you to be able to accomplish this? So if you talk with her like this in a more loving and kind and more of guidance, then this individual will be more likely to be able to step up and be able to handle it. And now when you have your conversation, at the end of the conversation, you just confirm, you say, okay, so now that we've had this conversation, is there anything that you're lacking that would hinder you from being able to provide this particular thing? And they're going to say, nope, you've handled everything. All right, perfect. So now you have a certain timeline or a certain goal that you've given this person that they're going to deliver that thing. And now you've got a sync up of that. So you need to be able to do it in a loving and kind and warm way. But when you have an expectation, this is where the mind wants it and it craves it. And when you don't get it, you're going to be frustrated. And now when you talk to her, you will be frustrated in trying to talk with her and resolve this. Whereas if you get rid of the expectation and you just gradually work towards this goal, and it's a matter of making sure she has the wisdom that she needs, that she has the resources that she needs, and now you just guide her towards the particular goal that you have, now you can be calm and collected and provide her what she needs, rather than allow your anger and frustration to come out in any kind of conversations, because they will sense that, and then it'll be more difficult for you to accomplish what you need to accomplish with this employee. But if you get rid of the expectation and not require it, but instead gradually work towards it as a goal or objective, now you can be more polite and more peaceful and more skillful in the way that you work with this person to accomplish the goal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I am talking calmly with her, even when I'm frustrated. But it's just a thing she's forgetting to do. It's a small thing, needs 1 minute of thinking about it. And I'm talking calmly, but still I'm not sure she's gonna do it right all the time. And okay, I'll just keep practicing my mind to not be angry about it. But it is hard.
One of the key questions that I used to ask my employees when they were having difficulties with something is, I knew that there was, like you were saying, like a memory lapse or a lack of something. So I would say, what is it that you need to do in order to ensure that you can accomplish this goal? Because there's some hurdle, there's some obstacle in their way, and they haven't probably thought about that obstacle and they haven't figured out how to eliminate it. So your goal as an employer is not to just tell your employees to do it and demand that they do it and expect that they do it, but instead your role as an employer is to guide them in wise decision making so that they can see the things that they aren't able to see themselves, but you're helping to guide them to be able to see those things. So if you say to them as part of this conversation, what is it that needs to change? What is it that you need to do in order to accomplish this goal? What is it that's standing in your way from allowing you to accomplish this? And now they're basically seeing, oh, you know what? I keep forgetting it. And you know what I need to do is I need to put a little sticky note reminder on my computer so that every Monday morning I see that and I will be able to then remember to do this. Oh, perfect. So you have the solution of how to accomplish this each Monday morning, right? And they're like, yeah, I sure do. Perfect. So I'll be interested to see that Monday morning when you're able to send that to me, right? So done. So you don't have to like figure it out for them. All you have to do is ask them the questions to allow them to figure it out for themselves of how to accomplish this goal. Because you don't necessarily know what's standing in the way, or else you would just fix it. So you need to like be wise enough to ask this person questions that they can figure it out for themselves, and now you'll get better results.
Okay, thank you. I'll try.
Yeah, you're welcome. You can check in with me and let me know how it's going, and if there's other things that I can help you with, I'll help you with it. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, I'm not seeing anything anywhere else. So I'm going to just end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. Next week, we're going to be in chapter 15, which is titled True Love, Love Without Attachment. This is where we're really going to dive in and talk about relationships and how to be able to practice true love so that more and more you can receive true love. If you don't understand what true love is, that means you're not practicing it. So you might find that it's very challenging to receive that. You might feel like in certain situations that you're not being loved, or people aren't loving you, or you're not experiencing love. This is because the mind doesn't necessarily know what true love is, and you're not practicing it. So when you understand what it is and you practice it, not only can you practice it, but when it's coming back, you can identify that this is true love. Because sometimes people don't even understand what true love is, and when it's coming back to them, they don't even realize that that's actually true love. I had a student one time tell me that she broke up with her boyfriend like a week before, and then like she was in a talk with me where I taught her true love, and she's like, oh my goodness, he was practicing true love and I didn't even know it. I just ended this relationship and I feel like I shouldn't have done that. So when you understand what true love is, you'll be able to identify it when it's coming back to you. This is chapter 15 in our book. So if you'd like to read that before or after class, that'll really help you, and then I'm going to teach it to you as part of the class. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation together, and I'm going to be opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. So thank you very much for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee-ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.